Good afternoon. I'm Greg Braun, Executive Director of the Guardians of Martin County, and I'd like to welcome you to this next in our series of podcasts. This one is kind of a different topic for us, but as we have done with all of the others, we're highlighting various organizations with whom the Guardians collaborate. And today I'm very pleased to have two people with me from the Martin County chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society. So welcome, Carly Batts and Emily Hartdegen.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you, Greg.
Yeah, well, in the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to be talking about the native plant communities in Martin County and a little bit about the Native Plant Society, who they are, how long they've been around, how many members, what sort of outreach activities they do. So let's start with you, Carly. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became interested both in native plants and about the native chapter.
Sure. So, hey, everyone. My name is Carly Batts. I am a professional horticulturist in town. I work for Martin County. I'm also the president of the Native Plant Society here locally. I love what I do. So I'm very excited to be here today to talk about the amazingness that native plants evoke in the landscape visually, as well as providing for wildlife, which we all love seeing, and reducing, herbicides, fertilizers, which are harmful to our waterways, which are so important to our community. I would say I got interested in native plants as a child here, riding my horse. After a while, you're kind of bored at just looking around, so you want to get to know what you're seeing. And I got lucky in that I interned at the Hope Sound Wildlife Refuge, and one of the members from our chapter came in, Dinah Carroll, and she said, "You should come to this meeting." And I said, "That looks fun, I will." And so I was so impressed with our chapter. I learned so much. I honestly didn't really know much about native plants. And, in just a few years here I am, and I feel like, I'm pretty immersed in this topic. So,
Yeah, well, Very, very good. Thanks for that introduction. And Emily, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Emily Hartdegen. I am the vice president of the Florida Native Plant Society Martin County chapter. I am in environmental consulting, so I do water quality work. My work isn't directly plant related, but I like to pull them in whenever I can. And I first got immersed in plants in my undergraduate degree. I went to undergrad for ecology, basically, and I took a couple of plant classes. And those were actually my least favorite classes because I hate memorizing taxonomy. So you won't see me throwing out scientific names all the time. But
bummer.
I know. That was my first foray into plants. And then I moved to North Texas, where I had very little access to public land. I live north of Dallas. It's mostly agricultural. We just had a few little public parks. And so I just started teaching myself the plants in my little 3/4 mile loop around my house to just kind of have a way to engage with the environment. And I found out that I really loved it. It turns out when I teach it to myself and I think about it in a way that is fun and get to look at these little ecological principles at work on a different scale, it's actually really fun. So then I moved into gardening. And when I moved down to Florida, Carly was one of the first people I met through a mutual friend. And like she does to anyone who's ever met her, she will recruit you to the Native Plant Society.
So you liked it?
Obviously, yes. Yeah, I loved it. So I started going to meetings, and it was awesome. It was a great way to meet new people in a new place that I had just moved. It was a great way to learn more about gardening, which I loved, plant ecology. So I just really kind of enjoyed everything about it, and I haven't left.
Yeah, you found your niche.
Yeah, I found my niche. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, certainly one of the reasons that the Guardians are interested in native plants is they're representative of the natural communities in Martin County. And you hear so much about the Martin County difference, and I think that's one of the things that sets us off. Martin County has done an excellent job in preserving a variety of the native plant habitats. So I should have mentioned right at the outset that where we're recording this podcast is at Peck Lake Park in Hope Sound. So we're just off of Gomez, on the east side of Gomez, on a property, well, I'm not sure how many acres it is.
It's quite large.
But it extends from Gomez through an upland plant community with the pine trees and palmettos and that sort of thing. And then there's a boardwalk that goes for 1,000 feet or so through the different communities until we get out to the intracoastal waterway. So yes, I think the reason that the Guardians are pushing for native plants is because of the way it preserves kind of the natural Martin County. So thank you for doing your work to help protect that.
Oh, well, I loved what I do. So.
Yeah. Okay. So in your role now as the county horticulturalist, sounds like you've been involved with some interesting projects.
Oh, yeah. So we have a lot of cool things going on for native plants for where we have partnered with the Native Plant Society locally. One of the first was with a terrestrial orchid. It is state listed. The common name is Scarlet Lady's Tresses. It's a beautiful orchid, bright red. It's my favorite. And it's quite the success story because it started out simply with a concerned citizen who called into the county and said, hey, your mowers are out there mowing this threatened orchid. And we said, oh, okay, thank you for letting us know. We went out there, we scouted the area, and we adjusted our mowing schedule so that they can have the time to bloom out and go to seed. And for the past 3 years, the Native Plant Society, the Orchid Society, Master Gardeners, all different groups have worked with the county to do counts on the population and kind of GPS locate where they are in the range. And what's been really heartwarming and exciting as far as, short time frame, because a lot of times, with conservation, you feel like it takes a bit of time. We started out with a population around 130 individuals, and in 3 years, simply by changing our mow schedule this past year, we counted over 300.
Wow.
And so that's been really cool. We even have the rare color morph now showing up, which is albino or green variety. So very cool.
Okay, so I'm going to take us back a step, though, because most of us think about trees and shrubs. If it's there, it's there. It's there and visible all the time. But isn't this an orchid that is underground for like 10 or 11 months out of the year?
Yes, and so that was one of our concerns. If we ever needed to expand the roadway, which they like to grow alongside the road because native plants in Florida like the sun generally. A lot of them do. And so this plant needs open air to the sun to survive. It would get shaded out. And so it likes in the wild fire. But the next closest thing to that in society is mowing. And so, it does disappear and have an underground component that it resprouts from. And we recognize that. So the county, with the Orchid Society and others, paid for them to be grown out in the lab, our own genetics. And really exciting again, we just outplanted those babies into protected natural areas. And so now we have other populations growing that aren't just alongside the road.
Yeah, very good. And I'm going to ask you to go back a step as well, because when you said a listed plant, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so the state has a list that has plants that are either state threatened or federally threatened. They're combined. It's through FDACS, which is the Florida Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services. And it's a decent sized list, and it really spans the gamut of different types of plants. And so you do need to have a permit to work with these plants, which we did. We went through that process, even within the county, right away. We had, a permit process. So,
Yeah. Okay. So there's endangered plants, federally listed ones and state listed ones, and then there's threatened plants that are federally listed and state listed. But those lists aren't the same, are they? Aren't there some that are on one and not the other?
Ooh, that is a good question. I don't want to misspeak since this, I want to have the right information out there.
Okay.
So,
I do think they can be distinct lists.
yeah.
If something is federally protected, we have an obligation to protect it at a state level. But if something is state protected, there aren't the same protections that are extended to federal species.
You're right. Yep. Okay, that's
Good
good.
points, Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good clarification. I know I've done some work with the federally endangered perforate lichen. Grows only in those dry kind of scrub habitats. So yeah, that's one that's on the federal list, but I don't think it's the only way that it's protected by the state is by nature of it being on the federal list. Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting. And I've heard about the Ripple project. In fact, the Native Plant Society went on a field trip there, and it sounds like that's a project that you have both been engaged with. Is that right?
Yes, we have. So Ripple is a series of stormwater treatment areas, STAs. They are woven into a neighborhood in Palm City in Martin County that was having issues with street flooding. So there were a couple of kind of undeveloped or overgrown, not utilized properties in that neighborhood that the county purchased to develop this series of STAs. And they serve to basically hold water. The first one looks a bit like a trail with a wetland on the inside. There's one that looks more like a small creek or a ditch that runs into a larger retention pond. And then that water is then distributed back to the St. Lucie. So not only does it hold water, but it also removes nutrients from the water that are present from runoff, street runoff. Those are things like fertilizer, septic runoff, all of those kinds of things.
Pet waste, too.
Pet waste is a big one. So all of the native plants, it's fully planted with natives. All of the native plants in those systems serve to take nutrients out of the water and put them into plant growth. So then the water that goes into the St. Lucie River is less polluted than it was when it ran off of the neighboring streets into the system.
Yeah, very good. And I think innovatively, you were able to design a bunch of palms into that whole planting project that sort of recognizes the heritage of Palm City. So
Yes, I like that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the different palms that are there?
Carly, I'll send that one to you because you're the horticulturist for that project.
Okay. Yeah, so that was really fun. We worked with a great artist, Lucy Keshtavar and Marjorie Shropshire, who are both members of the Native Plant Society, and they really helped us engage with the neighborhood. And one of the things was that the neighborhood wanted to highlight Palm City with palms. And so we have some really unique palms there that you might not have ever seen anywhere else. Some, for me too, were new to work with, like a buccaneer palm. There's also Perotis palm, which is a beautiful palm to use for screening instead of maybe the non-native Areca palm. And there's royal palms, sable minor. I mean, the list is quite extensive, and they're right there for you to be able to view and see what conditions they're in. So maybe that's something you can then bring back to your own yard in concept, right? So.
Okay, and so for people who are listening to this podcast who might be interested in visiting it, is that property open to the public, and how would people get to it?
Absolutely. So it's right off of Cornell. There's a boat ramp there that you can park at and walk down to 29th Street. Is one of the 28th. Thank you. 28th Street is one of the streets you can walk down, and they all adjoin. The county does have a story map for those who are interested but not able to maybe go because of distance, and you can view it that way as well. It is a beautiful garden. It has 11,000 native plants in it. Wow. And we're constantly adding to the diversity of it. We have a volunteer group. If you're interested in volunteering and working with native plants and learning more about them, every Wednesday, 8:30 to 10:30, October through May. We have a great time working together there. And we actually just won an award for that property through the state's mothership, shall we say, the Florida Native Plant Society. We won the Garden of Excellence Award, which only 3 gardens won in the state. Wow. So it's pretty exciting. We were really proud to be able to win something like that. But the project is extremely unique. And, once you see it, you're like, oh, well, now I want one of those in my neighborhood.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've done. I use Ripple as like a fun example of what is possible for my yard because it has a lot more diversity in a lot smaller area than you might see. If you go for a walk on like your local trail, you'll see a lot of diversity, but it'll probably be pretty similar plant community throughout. Because this is man-made, we've really like scrunched a lot of options into a small area. So it's a good example of like what can grow in different conditions, what does well in the area, and like really nicely showcases some plants you might not have seen before.
Yeah, very good. So we jumped right into this, but can one of you explain what is a native plant?
Okay, so the easiest way, in my opinion, is to think about it pre-Columbus, right? So what was here before we started having real international trade going on, where people were like, I'd like this from my home country brought here for me to remember my home country by, or, oh, that looks cool. Let me see if I can grow that here. Native plants were what evolved to be here with this environment, and that's why they do so much better comparatively. They can deal with pests because they've evolved with pests, right? Whereas those non-native plants, they just don't have the same type of adaptations to being here. It's pretty hot. It sometimes can have a long dry spell. Florida is not as easy as you would think to be a plant. So, yeah.
Okay, so generally, if it was here before Columbus, it's considered to be a native plant for Florida.
Yes.
And so, are there records going back that far? How? So somebody must have decided what was around at that time.
Yeah, so super interesting the way that people have done that. A lot of them have looked back at historical journals from early explorers and as kind of the way to figure out what was here, painters of early times. But sometimes science in this industry or this part of, what we're looking at isn't always definite. There's still, things being found out all the time. Like maybe someone will take a soil core from a lake bottom and they'll find 10,000 years ago that there was actually this plant here, that we thought wasn't. So that's kind of the exciting part of this field, is that you're constantly learning things and discovering new items. So.
And in modern science times too, we have genetics that we can use to confirm or adjust all of these like long-term observational things that we have. So we can look at the genetics of the plant and compare it to genetics of plants all around the world and get a pretty good idea of where that plant came from and adapted or evolved, where it evolved. And we're constantly restructuring things and adjusting things to be, actually, maybe this was native to Texas and not Florida, but it's been here for hundreds of years, so it's naturalized now.
I say wind a lot of times has been a carrier for things that were local, kind of regionally there. Like the Caribbean is a place that often we get plants from because of the wind or, the tides and the currents and things like that too.
Yeah, I remember now reading an account of the seed pod from one of our native Tillandsia air plants was found 200 miles out in the ocean. I mean, it had just been blown that far.
That's so cool.
So I guess that's how a lot of those things move around.
Wow. Yeah, like most ecological questions, the more you think about it, the more complicated it becomes, which is what makes it fun.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but it is difficult knowing what's a native and what isn't. There's so many different kind of reference materials out there, and sometimes they're conflicting. So the one that I use is the University of South Florida's virtual herbarium. Tell us a little bit about that.
I feel like it's a seed catalog and a plant catalog of plants that are native to the area. Is that the same that's connected to the Florida Native Plant Atlas?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you can look up any plant. It's, I suppose, not specific to natives. It tells you non-natives and invasives. It'll give you whether or not it's vouchered in an area, which basically means that it went through a scientific process of documenting it to be known to a region by someone finding it in the field and having it vouchered at usually a university or by a specialist. And it'll tell you the like taxonomic information of the plant. And yeah, am I missing anything else?
I mean, vouchering, which is something that our chapter does as a work group, and we've been able to contribute several species to that list that had previously been not known here. And so that's important. You know, a lot of conservation groups are able to use that list to advocate on behalf of certain species,
Right.
as well as track invasive plant movements, which is important too for funding and research. So yeah, the plant atlas is definitely one of my favorite resources for figuring out if it's native or not.
Yeah. All right. Yep. And they have maps of the entire state of Florida with each county shaded in if the plant has been documented there. So that's certainly helpful as well. So let's say we've got, I don't know, 1,500 or so different plants that have been documented in Martin County. Certainly that's natives and non-natives, but isn't there really a fairly small percentage of non-natives that aren't invasives?
Yes, not all non-natives are invasive plants. There's a distinction about kind of ecological harm. So I think of an invasive plant as something that is non-native and is ecologically disruptive. So it is like pervasive. It can outcompete natives, or it can contribute to some other environmental problem.
So Brazilian peppers and Australian pines. and sorts of
Right.
things.
Yeah, like
Okay.
Melaleuca, things that will like take over areas and outcompete our natives. Whereas non-native encompasses anything that wasn't originally, well, not originally, but wasn't here pre-Columbus.
Okay, so you've got a blouse with oranges. Are oranges native to Florida?
They are not. Sadly. I wish they were. But that's why, you know, you could argue citrus greening could have happened because it's not a native plant. And so pests came and, you know,
They have no
created
tolerance.
Yeah. So, you know, I like to wear this shirt to bring that point up that, you know, one of our most famous plants in Florida is not actually native. So,
And I
sadly.
think most of the native plant people aren't purists that only have natives.
Correct.
I mean, I love sea coconut palms out and about, but they're not native either.
Oh, Greg.
As long as they're not next to a water body and can't be spreading coconuts all over the place, they're not the worst.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a step back and talk about the chapter a little bit. Because how many members do you have? How many years has the organization been in existence? What kind of outreach activities do you have? Those sorts of things.
Okay, I'll start and then Emily can jump in. So essentially, the organization was started in 1980 by the state, and, you know, regional chapters were started. And our chapter has been around for quite some time. It started at the Environmental Studies Center in Jensen Beach, and we still have some members who are with us who remember that awesome day that the chapter was founded. And we have about 180 members right now. You don't have to be a member to come to our lecture and field trips series, although membership is often what drives our ability to do what we call impact projects locally. For example, last year we worked with the Environmental Studies Center, and we helped to remove all the invasives on their shoreline and installed native plants to create a living shoreline. So that was very cool and a great showcase of what our chapter is doing. Yeah. So, and if you want more information on our chapter, it's very easy to do. Emily did a wonderful job designing our website, and so I'll let her talk about what's on our website available to people who are interested.
Yeah, so a lot of what I do as vice president and before that was I work very hard to try and kind of aggregate resources for people to use. So I kind of crowdsource information about where you can find natives at local nurseries, what ID books are really great. What books have people enjoyed reading about Florida's history? What kind of mulches are ideal for us? And all of those kinds of questions that you probably have about gardening and natives. I try to crowdsource all of that information into one place on our website. It's mcfnps.org, Martin County, Florida Native Plant Society. And there is a whole page called, I think, Compiled Resources or something like that. And you can go there to kind of get a jumping off point to answer all of those questions. We also have a lovely page that goes over kind of our impact projects that we've done, some of which we've talked about tonight. Yeah, and it's a great resource. We work very hard to try and keep it up to date. It includes the events we'll be at for our outreach events, as well as information being posted on our Facebook page.
And so what kind of outreach events do we have coming up, Emily?
Wow, so you're just going to steal Greg's job now.
Oh, sorry, Greg.
Yeah, competition. Yeah, so I think last year we participated in 8 outreach events, I want to say, which was ambitious and a lot of fun. And our program meetings, for our monthly program meetings that occur every Wednesday, or the first Wednesday of every month from October to May, except for December, we try to keep the topics for our programs more broad and kind of get into the weeds of some fun plant topics. So this year, what is our theme? Oh, roots, getting back to our roots. Wow, sorry.
You can tell she's worked all day, too.
But for our outreach events, we try to keep it more like baseline. Like we have 30 seconds or a few minutes of somebody's attention. And so we really just try to get native plants on the top of people's minds. So we talk more about gardening because I think that's the entry point for more people into native plants. So we have information on how to convert your turf lawn into something native, or what native plants could substitute some non-natives. Like many people don't know that we have more than one species of native lantana. And if you're really interested in lantanas, you can be planting these that have more ecological benefits. So we do a lot of that at our outreach events. And we also have little activities for kids too, to just kind of get them thinking about the environment. We were just at the Jonathan Dickinson Fire Festival. Upcoming this year, we have the Jensen Beach Garden Expo. We have...
That's usually in February, right?
February. We have Earth Day at the Oxbow Environmental Study Center in St. Lucie County, as well as Jensen Beach usually. I'm not going to remember all of our events, so they are also on our website.
And one new one that we have coming up in March, the first Saturday in March, we are going to host our first native plant garden tour. And so we're gearing up for that. It's going to be a really cool experience for people to go and see natives in real lawn, HOA type settings, as well as more naturalistic settings. It'll span the gamut for people who are interested in all types of looks for their yard.
Yeah, very, very good. And I'm hearing some catbirds squeaking back here in the background. Now, one of those bird species that relies on native berry-producing plants. And I think we're going to weave into the video portion of this podcast some of the different habitats that we saw here at Peck's Lake. We're going to go through the mangroves and out to the edge of the intracoastal. But we also passed through kind of an interesting maritime hammock area, which I think is one of those communities that's pretty rare in Martin County, I think.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to see the water, right? And so I think Peck's Lake does a great job of reminding us how much of that barrier we had against storms on the mainland. So, when you walk the boardwalk here, you really get an idea of how much there was to get to the water in most areas of our coastal community. And so that's a really different part of this park.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And probably also part of what keeps this portion of the lagoon in better water quality kind of situation, because you got that wide kind of floodplain wetland.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Okay, well, we're starting to run out of time here. So is there anything I've forgotten to ask?
Before we go, in addition to our garden tour, which is one of our 2 big fundraisers for the year, We also have a native plant sale for anyone that wants to incorporate natives into their landscape or put them on a little pot on your patio. There are some that can be suitable for that. Come and see us on January 18th at the Martin County Fairgrounds. It's part of the Arbor Day celebration that UF IFAS does there. So we'll be selling a huge collection of natives. We'll have more information about that on our Facebook page if you keep an eye out for it. But between that and the garden tour, those are our big fundraisers for the year. So all of our membership really goes to facilitating our program meetings and kind of keeping the lights on. And most of the impact projects that we do that we've talked about are from donations. So we accept donations on our website, and then we also fundraise for ourselves through these events that we throw.
Right. Okay. You mentioned those fundraising events, but I hear that your plant swaps at your monthly meetings are very successful.
They are. They are. You can bring a native that you have a extra of or you propagated to our meeting and donate it. And we have a plant sale where you purchase raffle tickets. And you get to put your little raffle tickets in different cups to be raffled off for all of these native plants. That's kind of like a nice little community plant swap situation. You do not have to bring a plant to participate. Anyone can participate.
Yeah, I like it because, you know, if you're someone who is not sure you can make a certain plant live in your yard, it's a very low-cost way to be like, well, I don't have to cry about it because, you know, I donated the money and it wasn't expensive.
And they tend to be the plants that do the best, too, because people have the most of them to do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So you're a nonprofit organization.
Yes.
Can people sign up to be members in person or online?
You can do it in person. The easiest way to join as a member is to go to fnps.org and go to the join page. An individual annual membership is $35, and that goes to supporting our chapter and our mission. And anyone can join online. It's the easiest way.
Yeah, very good. So we're out of time, but I want to thank you both for taking the time to tell us a little bit about the Martin County chapter. Well, no, we didn't talk about St. Lucie County. Doesn't your chapter also include St. Lucie County?
We do. We have adopted the St. Lucie County. We have several members from St. Lucie, and we spread out our outreach events across both counties, as well as kind of our general impact projects we try and distribute. Our garden tour, I believe, includes
the upper reaches of Martin County.
Okay,
so that way
me or
you
St.
could
Lucie.
have people be able to travel easily between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you're listening from St. Lucie, when you join to be a member, you'll select the Martin County chapter.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so our time is up, and we're getting eaten up by no-see-ums.
Yeah.
No.
And it's getting dark. But I want to thank you both for taking the time to do this. The Guardians intend to continue these podcast series probably once a month. And so we're looking for suggestions for organizations that we should feature during 2025. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.